Hello, this is U.S. Immigration Attorney Sharifa Tharpe. I'm here live to take your U.S. immigration related questions. I'm also here to give you an important update. So go ahead, put those questions in the comments starting now, that as soon as I'm finished with my update, we can talk about your questions. It's so good to see you here. And for those of you who are here in the U.S., happy Labor Day. I hope you are getting the day off to rest and get ready for the week. Now, something unheard of happened last week. And some of you may have even gotten these emails already, but the US government is now sending out, they have now launched a campaign to help immigrants, mostly the migrants who have crossed into the country at the southern border, or those who were paroled into the United States. They're now launching a campaign to help them to understand how to proceed to get the work permit, because there is a brewing crisis going on, mainly in New York, and I'll bet we'll see this popping up in other states as well, like Massachusetts. There are large influx of immigrants that are heading to those states, and many of them who cross the border to be able to get assistance. And one of the big reasons for this crisis is they are there going to, for example, in New York, there have been an influx of 100,000 immigrants, most of them coming across the border, who went there, and they are there because they're seeking shelter, they're seeking other types of assistance and necessities. uh, and one reason for this is when they enter the country, they don't know, they're not aware that they can apply for a work permit. And so they have to depend on the system they either depend on the system or until they get that work permit. And so the local government, the state government in New York, so the mayor of New York City, as well as the governor, has started to increase the pressure on the federal government to be able to give immigrants, not only the immigrants that cross the border, but also immigrants in general who don't have their papers, to allow them to get parole so that they can get their work permits. This would allow them to not depend on the system, to become less dependent on the system, less dependent on getting shelter from the state, which is running out, by the way, less dependent on food assistance and medical care, where they can work for their own money and be able to support themselves here. Now, usually when you are paroled into the United States, so some individuals are paroled coming across the border. And then the Biden administration started a program with certain countries, like Haiti, Venezuela, Nicaragua. Those countries, they can be paroled from their country, given permission to come into the country, and then they are given parole for 2 years. Now, the way that they get here, though, is through a sponsor. So, this is a new program that the Biden administration had launched a while back to be able to stop the influx of immigrants coming in at the border. But what's happening now is that they're here, and many of them are not aware they're just paroled in, and they're not aware they are eligible for the work permit. So this is all the more reason why you need to make sure that you understand whether you're eligible, because it's not only rolled across the border. So being eligible for a work permit does not mean that you had to come across the border to get it. There are other ways to obtain employment authorization here. And this is one of the things that I focus on when I am helping immigrants to understand what they qualify for, especially those who are here without their papers, because many immigrants are here without their papers and they don't even realize that there is an option for them based on their particular circumstances. So, for example, asylum is another way that individuals can apply for employment authorization. When you come here, no matter how you've come here, if you are afraid to return to your country because based on maybe your beliefs, based on your identity, based on the fact that you're the member of a particular social group that's being targeted in your country, you may be able to apply for asylum. It's important for you to understand the deadline for asylum. Now, there is a 1 year deadline from the date of your entry. And if you don't meet that deadline, it's not impossible to apply, but it's going to become a lot more difficult to qualify for that asylum. Now, once you've properly applied for asylum, you've gotten your receipt notice and it shows the receive date on the notice, we call it receipt notice, they are going to count 150 days from that receive date. And then on the 150th day, you are able to apply for asylum online. So when we apply for our clients, we simply apply online. It's very easy, it's very quick, as long as we help our clients to go through the process to be able to apply for the work permit on the 150th day. Once that has been completed and you filed for the work permit 150 days after applying for asylum, then on the 180th day, anytime after the 180th day, that's 6 months after you've applied for asylum, you will be issued the work permit. So they sent out a mass email campaign on August 31st to those that they believe may be eligible for the work permits. But keep in mind, if you have not received this email, it doesn't mean that you don't qualify. Some of you you may not even be on the immigration's radar, you may not be on their contact list. And so this is where it's important, though, for you to get an evaluation about whether you qualify, because right now, because people who are ignorant, they are not aware of the fact that they qualify. They're not aware that they're entitled to apply for the work permit. Because of that, there is now a brewing crisis in New York, and we're seeing that immigrants are now going to Massachusetts and other states. So I can just imagine how miserable it is to be coming to this country. You many most Vast majority of immigrants are coming here because they're trying to escape persecution, they're trying to escape abuse, they're trying to escape terrible conditions, and they're coming here for a better life. And I can just imagine how frustrating it is that you may want to come here, you may want to work, you want to do everything right, you want to pay your taxes, but the fact that you don't have the work permit is not allowing you to achieve the goals that you're here to achieve. And it creates a frustrating crisis for everybody involved, because I really don't think that there is a disadvantage here. If the work permits are issued to the immigrants that qualify for it, it means that we can alleviate the shortage in the labor market. That's for one. It also means that it reduces the possibility, or it reduces the ability for traffickers to take advantage of immigrants. Because as an attorney, I also represent victims of trafficking, because there is immigration relief for that. And trafficking comes in different forms. And so what you find is labor trafficking. Those who come here, they may not have their papers. It's a lot easier for individuals. And keep in mind that individuals like employers see themselves as traffickers, but the way that they treat the immigrant is a form of trafficking, and that's what makes them the trafficker. They just don't see themselves as that. And so it enables them, a system like this, where they are unable to obtain the ability to work, enables traffickers to traffic, labor traffic, and also sex traffic individuals are here without their papers. I see this on a daily basis, and it is very heartbreaking to know that people are innocent people. They come here with the expectation that they're going to be safe, and then they go through additional terrible, traumatic ordeals because traffickers are taking advantage of the fact that they don't know their rights. They don't know that they may qualify for the ability to work and get a work permit. So this is where I say, get in touch with me, no matter whether you came across the border, whether you're here, you came with a visa and you're afraid to return to your country, or you're here and you ended up overstaying your visa. The wisest thing you can do is make sure that you evaluate your options. Because you may have the ability to get a work permit. So put those questions in the comments, and I see one here. What is your business number? So if you go to the link in the profile, you'll be able to see my number on the website. I'm also going to type it here. So it's going to be under immigration lawyer Sharifa, and it's 561 405 4889. Now, if you go to the link in the profile, you'll also see a button to schedule your own appointment. Go ahead, schedule your appointment so we can talk about what's going on with you and figure out if you can qualify for that. Now, how much is your consultation, and is it on Teams or Zoom? So my consultations are by phone or Zoom, and it's $150 for the half an hour. So we really jump into detail though, because the way that I practice immigration law is I focus on my clients, not only just the basics. I don't just ask, are you married to a citizen? Is an employer sponsoring you? And if the answer is no to both, I tell you, you don't have a choice. I don't do that. What I do is I evaluate every aspect of your background that's relevant to determine whether you have other options. Because yes, some immigration attorneys, they only focus on the basics. They focus on the basic qualifications. However, there are over 21 ways to get your green card. And in many instances, green card, your work permit, by the way, is another. It's not just the green card, but I evaluate whether you can gain status in other ways. And so, you know, I don't just focus on the basics here. I focus on what are some other ways for you to gain relief here so that you can gain the status, the protections you need to thrive here. All right, so I'm going to answer some more questions. If you want the number, go just scroll through scroll through the comments here section. You'll see immigration lawyer Sharifa. Yep, immigration lawyer Sharifa. The number is 561 405 4889. We do have staff members who are available right now to schedule your appointment so we can evaluate your options. Now, the campaign that the U.S. Government is launching right now is for individuals who either applying for asylum, individuals who have crossed the border and were paroled into the U.S., or those who were paroled into the U.S. So if you came across the border, and I know that there are individuals not only from the countries that I listed, like Venezuela, Haiti, Nicaragua. There are other countries too where you have come in through the border. And if you've come in and they did parole you, that means that you could very well qualify for the work permit. Now, the work permit based on the parole is usually valid for 2 years. And then keep in mind that in some cases, when you do come in and you're paroled, there's what's called conditional parole. The conditional parole does not usually enable you to adjust status here or get the green card. If you apply for asylum and you are on conditional parole, you can get the work permit that way. But when you're paroled, you have to be paroled under a specific provision of the law to be able to obtain that work permit. So that's one other thing, is that I would evaluate to see if you have received that form of parole to be able to apply for work authorization here. And then if you do now qualify for permanent residence, you may be able to apply for that through adjustment of status. All right, so questions. Do you have any idea when I will get my prima facie or work permit? I applied in June, got my receipt. Another question, please, how long will it take if I send I-824 to NBC for my kids to be here? So let's do it piece by piece. First, the prima facie usually takes anywhere from 3 to 6 months for you to get that. After you get your receipt notice, after applying for, and I think this is VAWA, because whenever we talk about prima facie determination letter, we're talking about VAWA here. Now, let me just stop for a minute and explain what the prima facie determination letter is. Right after you've applied, so 3 to 6 months after, they will do a preliminary review of your VAWA application. And if they see that you submitted all the required evidence, they will issue what's called a prima facie letter to say, based on the evidence, if everything is true here, you would qualify. And so we're giving you this letter to show that you are in the middle of applying and that we think you have a good chance of being approved. So take that letter. You can take that letter, and in some states you can get it to get your driver's license. You can use it to get certain benefits. It depends on the state you're in, though, and their requirements. So you usually have to contact the Department of Human Services or the department the department in your state where they issue public assistance. They would be able to tell you what kind of public assistance you'd be able to receive based on that prima facie determination letter. If you're looking to use that prima facie determination letter to get your state ID or driver's license, you would call the DMV, so Department of Motor Vehicles state, to ask. You can ask them, what are the requirements for you to get your driver's license based on the prima facie determination letter, and they'll be able to inform you about whether they do accept that prima facie and how you can present it to them to be able to get your state state ID. Now, this letter is what is issued. All being well, it's submitted properly, you have submitted all the requirements, you'll get this prima facie determination letter. If not, you'll get a request for evidence, and they'll indicate on that request for evidence what you're missing, what you need to provide to them before they can give you a prima facie determination letter. Now, once you've received a prima facie determination letter, it's for 1 year. So your driver's license, if you do get your driver's license, will usually be issued for 1 year. And then as long as they're processing your case, continue to issue your prima facie determination letter automatically upon its expiration for every 6 months after that, until they make a decision on your VAWA. So that's the first question here I gave you. I know I gave you a mouthful, but so in short, that I told you what the prima facie determination letter is, and now you can expect that 3 to 6 months after, as long as you've properly submitted that application. Now, don't panic if it's taking a little while for you to get the receipt notice. Sometimes they do get backed up. And when they do get backed up, it can take even up to 2 months to get the receipt notice before they even start to process your case for the prima facie determination letter. Now, now that I've talked about the receipt notice, the prima facie determination letter, work permit. Now, the work permit is dependent on your adjustment of status application that you've applied for along with your VAWA application. And this usually comes right now, it can come anywhere from 6 months to 12 months. I see most of them coming in at the 9 to 12 month mark after applying. Before the work permit is, you usually have to do the biometrics. Biometrics are being scheduled about 2 months after they've issued the receipt notice. The biometrics appointment enables do the background check that helps them to understand if you have any criminal issues that may disqualify you. So now, how long will it take if I send I-824 to NVC for my kids to be here? So if your kids are outside of the United States, they cannot come to the United States until you've actually been approved. So you should not be sending any I-824s to the NVC until you've been approved. Can I request humanitarian parole at Chicago O'Hare Airport and how? So it doesn't know. So with the humanitarian parole, there are different ways that you can apply. There is a process. So they will not, usually they would not grant you that parole on the spot. You at any border you can apply for parole, but humanitarian parole is something that you usually apply for when you're coming or when you're outside of the United States and you want to come in, but you have no other means of getting into the United States. Now, if you're at the border and you would like to apply for asylum, you can declare asylum upon your entry into the United States. You can also, though, apply for asylum after you've entered the United States, and you have time to prepare that application. But this is where it's very important to get legal advice before you do anything at the airport, because keep in mind, when you are coming into the airport, the officer is also evaluating whether they should turn you around. So if you make any claims that they don't find as valid, and now they find that you may overstay your visa, they're going to send you back. So you don't want to necessarily jump into just coming to the airport without guidance and claiming humanitarian parole without first getting your matter evaluated. This is where it's very important, because at the airport they do have discretion to turn you around, and it's very hard to fight that at the airport. You're going to have to fight that from your country. And if you are in fear for your life, if you're in danger and you're sent back there, then it's going to be a lot harder to get back to the US. So make sure you get legal advice, because you know it doesn't you have to be careful what you're saying at the airport. What are the requirements to apply for the work permit? So you have different qualifications, so many different ways that you could get the work permit. So it's really going to come down to your particular circumstances. One way I just mentioned is if you're paroled into the United States. Then after you're paroled and you're here, you can apply. And keep in mind, paroled they have different types of parole. And it really depends on the type of parole you get, then you can apply for the work permit. But there are other ways too. So I help my clients to obtain a work permit if they've applied for asylum. I help my clients to obtain the work permit if they have VAWA, or if they're applying for adjustment of status through VAWA or through family or through employment. I've helped clients to obtain the work permit when they've received deferred action, where they have deferred action is where they are getting protection from any immigration enforcement for about 2 years, and they are able to get the work permit at the same time. Now, deferred action, you can get it based on labor, you can get it based on medical conditions if you need treatment here and you're out of status. Um, all right, let me scroll through, put those questions in the comments. I'm going through and answering those questions. These are all questions. Requirements for a business visa. So with the business visa, I think you might be referring to the E2 Treaty Investor Visa. And I see Yadman Ryan. I'm thinking you might be Jamaican. And Jamaicans do qualify for the E2 investor visa. Now, to qualify for this, you have to be from an E2 treaty investor country, Jamaica, the Caribbean. You have a number of countries across the world, but in the Caribbean, there is Jamaica, Grenada, Trinidad, and Tobago that qualify for the E2 treaty investor visa. Now, after you've determined you qualify based on your citizenship in the country, the next thing is, do you have your substantial investment in a business that you want to get started here, to be able to show that you can open a business here and run that business? And are you going to are you needed to be here to run that business? Now, substantial investment doesn't mean that you're going to just have money sitting in the bank. You do have to show that you are currently investing or have invested in the business, because they want to know that you truly have the intent to open up this business and run this business. And so, where you have money in the bank just sitting there, they are very skeptical about that. However, if you're using it to it for business purposes, you're using that money and you can show a track record of your investment in the business, and maybe the process of starting business, then that can qualify you. The source of the funds, they're very flexible on it. You just need to make sure that it's from a legal source. They do have some. They do, make sure. So some no-nos here about, for example, if you're getting it from a loan, you have to make sure that it is a loan where you have skin in the game, that you are personally required to pay the loan, and it's not necessarily dependent on the business. So it's not necessarily something that has the business as collateral. Um, Now, another thing is you have to make sure it's a temporary visa. So you can get it renewed for as long as you show that you are still running this business. Um, but if you don't convince them that you're coming here to run that business, you're coming here for the sole purpose of running that business, and they suspect that you're just using this to then stay here permanently, that can also cause you to be denied. Also, the business income coming in can't be menial. So, for example, if you haven't started the business already, then it's a good idea to show the projected income from the business. And this can be done by using experts, so business planning experts who can help you to show your business plan and show your projected income from the business, the profits coming from the business. You can't, when we say you can't make a menial amount, you can't, or a marginal amount, you can't just make an amount that is going to be enough to support yourself. You have to show that you're going to be running a business that will be thriving, that will bring jobs in, that will grow over time. They like to see that too. Now, the amount of the substantial investment is going to depend on the type of business. What is the procedure to apply for a student visa what is the procedure to apply for a student visa or a work permit outside of the US? So I'm glad you brought up this question. Be careful. Work permits, you can't apply for work permits outside of the US. Work permits, you apply for when you're here and you qualify for it. You have to get a work permit when you qualify for either benefits or relief, immigration benefits or relief while being here. When I say relief, I mean relief. You need to be here because you're afraid to return to your country. You've been the victim of trafficking, you've been the victim of abuse, and you need the work permit to help to alleviate those issues for you. And then when I talk about benefits, when you're applying for the green card, you get the work permit. If you're the spouse of certain employment based visa holders, you can possibly get the work permit as a benefit. So that's how the work permit works. The student visa, you have to first apply to a college, show that you've been accepted. The DSO at the college, that's a designated international student officer, will then issue what's called an I-20. The I-20 shows what you've been accepted for, the cost of the education, You'll use that I-20 to schedule your student visa appointment, and then you'll attend your appointment, your visa appointment, where the officer will make a determination as to whether you qualify. Going into the interview, you do have to make sure you can show how you're going to pay for it. And you sometimes you can do that using a sponsor, someone who can then show that they will pay your student for your tuition. If my green card holder mom sponsors an unmarried child over age 21, how long does it take? About 5 to 7 years right now. Can you apply for asylum being a Jamaican? Yes, if you are experiencing persecution. Asylum isn't, now, one thing I want to make clear is asylum isn't, life is hard in my country, so I would like to apply for asylum. Asylum is based on a real threat that you're facing that you are afraid of in your country. Now, once again, it has to be a specific real threat to you or the group that you are a part of. It's, for example, like I know in some countries, crime rates are going up, incidents of gang violence is going up. That alone will not get you asylum. However, being specifically targeted, um, gang members, because maybe you're the family member of someone who rejected the gang, then in that case, you are being persecuted based on a particular social group, which could be your family. If, for example, you're being targeted because of your sexual orientation, then that and the sexual orientation that you qualify with, that qualifies you for asylum. So it's going to depend on your particular circumstances, but you have to have a credible fear of persecution based on very specific criteria. And you know what? I wouldn't even say specific, but let me give you a list here. So it's usually based on your ethnicity, based on your religion, based on your political opinion, or any particular social group. The any particular social group is where we do have some flexibility to apply for our clients to get asylum, because any particular social group can be any group that's being persecuted or harmed in their country. Now, but when we talk about group, there are definitely certain definitions we have to show, definitions of that group. For example, it has to have certain characteristics, the unchangeable characteristics. You have to be identifiable by the community or the public as being part of that group. For example, when I was doing some research, doing some case law research, I did find that, for example, immigrants, right? So, say in Jamaica, um, you went to the police to report crimes, gang violence against you, and it was not known publicly that you had submitted this kind of information to the police. You would not necessarily qualify for asylum because you are a part of a particular social group of informants under immigration law, because it is not it's not public knowledge that you reported this, then you may not qualify under asylum law. However, you may qualify if now it's public knowledge that you had reported gang violence to the police, and now you're facing retaliation and the police can't protect you. Then you may be a part of a particular social group of individuals who have been labeled as informants, because there's that public knowledge. You're now a part of a particular social group that's out there, that's identifiable. So, that's just to show you that it first of all, there's case law out there that talks about different case laws where it's court, where the judges make decisions about who can qualify and who can't qualify, who can qualify and can't qualify for asylum. And the judge may now create a law by defining certain aspects of the law. And so it shows you how involved it can be when we are looking at asylum. But it also means that asylum law is flexible. And that's why we can look at your circumstances. I, as an attorney, can look at your circumstances and then determine whether you would fit within the criteria of an asylum seeker who can be granted asylum under immigration law. All right, let's see. How long is EAD taking for I-485 based on employment? So you could be looking at around 3 to 4 months. I filed VAWA. When do I get the? I'm not sure. I think you mistyped. I see. When do we get designed? I'm not sure what that is. Hi there, Mohammed. Is there any sign for you to know that your lawyer has applied for a T visa for you? So, the great question. So the T visa is so confidential that we get our correspondence by mail. You can't even check the case status online because it is so confidential. The T visa is sensitive because it is based on being the victim of trafficking. Now, trafficking comes in different forms. What I would say is, if you have been in a situation where you felt stuck, you had to leave because the employer or the person, the intimate partner, um, the stranger, the acquaintance, whoever that person was, no matter who they were, they made you feel that way. They made you feel afraid to leave the situation. You wanted to, but you didn't. You felt like you couldn't because maybe they threatened you. Maybe they indirectly threatened you. Maybe they insinuated they would report you to ICE. Maybe they took your important documents away from you, like your passport. So you know they know you wouldn't leave. Maybe they promised you your work permit. So you felt like if you left, you wouldn't get that work permit. It's all a ruse. These are examples of trafficking. Now, if when because of this situation where you are the victim, the immigration service wants your, they don't want any chances of any information being issued or being accidentally exposed to a potential trafficker who's trying to find you or trying to find out your information. And because of that, you can't check online. But how I inform my clients that it has been submitted and accepted is we provide them the receipt notice. Every case gets a receipt notice, but we do only get it by mail. Now, the T status is taking a while to get the receipt notices, and so that can be nerve-wracking as well. But once an attorney has confirmed that it is filed, it's pending now with the US Immigration Service, then ask that attorney for a copy of your receipt notice, and that's going to be proof that it was filed. My EAD is going to expire 3/24. When should I apply? Um, So the documentation will tell you at least 3 months before the expiration. So at least 3 months, make sure you're applying. So so in this case, so I have a question here regarding the termination of removal proceedings. So that's a relief because those can be complicated and they can be stressful. You have a VAWA and you also have the U visa. Is it safe to use my? I'm not sure what advanced parole. So is it safe to use the advanced parole? Now, what I would say here is with VAWA, it's not with VAWA, you can apply for the travel document. However, in your case where you do have an inadmissibility involved, which is the false claim to US citizenship, it can be risky. And I would be very careful about that. However, I'm not your attorney. I haven't evaluated your case. I don't know how risky it is. You were previously in immigration proceedings, as in to get deported, that got terminated, but now you have VAWA and you have a pending U visa. You are facing a higher risk than usual. So if you were my client, with clients with so many issues going on, I would advise against traveling. However, I don't know your case and I can't give you personalized legal advice. Um, Okay, I'm a student in the US and my visa expires in 2025. What are my chances of staying here and getting the green card? So there are over 21 ways to get the green card. Whether you qualify for one of those ways, though, is really going to be dependent on what your particular background is. What are you studying? Maybe even the what you're studying can get you to the green card. Because, for example, after you've studied, are there employers that are willing to sponsor you? Or can you start with an H-1B and then from the H-1B, will the employer get the green card there? So employment may be a way for you to obtain the green card. If you have family here, maybe one of your family members who qualifies to sponsor you may be able to do that. Over that time, I'm not sure if you're married, but over that time, if you meet someone, you can get married, and that can also lead to a green card. I know it's uncertain now because nothing seems to be set in stone for you, but this is where it's important to possibly evaluate your options to determine which way to go. Uh, okay, so hello, how can I contact you? Go to the link in the profile. You can schedule your own appointment, and once or you can click on any one of those buttons and it will lead you to the website, lead you to the page where you can schedule your own appointment, or you can call the office at 561-405-4889. How long does it take to get the letter in the mailbox after USCIS requests they need initial evidence? So I would say maybe a week, a few days to a week and a half to get that in the snail mail. And it just depends on also how often you check your mailbox. Um, I answered that. So what is your business number? All right, let me scroll through and see what other USCIS said my sis had 1 week for her travel document decision. But telling her no, it's taking longer. Yeah, so you can't ever depend on them to tell you a timeline. So unfortunately, it is taking a while. It's taking months to get the travel document if you're applying on your own. Um, my two daughters come across the border from Mexico. They are in New York. I'm a green card holder. Can I file for them? They're age 33 and 27. Now, if they're unmarried, you can file for them. However, filing for them is not going to be an overnight solution. You can file for them 5 to 7 years is when they're going to be ready to process it. And it depends on where they are going to be in 5 to 7 years, and that's going to tell what situation they're in 5 to 7 years is going to tell you whether they can qualify for adjustmental status or whether they have to go through a process of going back home. So we need to talk about that to figure out, but you can start by filing what's called an I-130 petition. Can I request asylum on the basis of my sexual orientation? How? Thanks. Yes. So if that, but keep in mind that this is not just about discrimination, but you have to face persecution. Things like you have to be threatened in your country based on the group you identify with related to your sexual orientation. But absolutely, that you can get that, apply for asylum based on that. here. All right. I think I'm back though. So let me see. So I was answering here. Applied for a work permit since April when I did my fingerprints. I guess you're thinking, how long is it going to take from here? I don't know what you're applying for. I don't know if this is adjustment of status or some other form of benefit or relief. But give it some time. Work permits are not really taking it, it doesn't come overnight as soon as you apply. Um, okay, you visa approved 2 years. Can I apply for travel document and I can travel? So if you have U status, so you got U visa from outside of the US and you come in, then possibly move back and forth. However, if you got status, then it's, traveling with a travel document is going to be very risky because you can lose the status when you leave the country and then have to reapply for it at the embassy, and they look at your application all over again. So the travel document with the U status, with the T status, is very risky. I applied for VAWA since November. I just received prima facie in April, but I still am waiting for work permit. How long, please, can I wait for it? I'm in Florida. So it is taking 9 to 12 months. Most of them I'm seeing 9 to 12 months could come. I've seen shorter, but most are coming in 9 to 12 months. Hopefully, they have designated now 2 service centers to assist with the processing. So hopefully we'll see faster processing time soon. So please, what are your experiences seeking asylum on the basis of sexual orientation at the airport? Give me a call. You need advice. You need legal advice. You need a lawyer. So make sure you get legal advice. When you file on based on your marriage, do they give the child the work permit when the parent receives his or her? No. So if you're applying for employment, if you're applying through your U.S. citizen spouse, you cannot, your child cannot be included in that application. First of all, if you're applying based on your permanent resident spouse and you're in status at the time you apply for adjustment of status through your permanent resident spouse, the child, you have to apply for a separate adjustment of status application for your child and then apply for the separate work permit. Will not automatically be issued for the child because the parent's own is. How long after the USCIS interview do I get the work permit? In Florida. So, what if you're talking about a family-based or marriage-based interview? I would be thinking, when will you be getting the green card? Because usually after the interview is when they're going to make the final decision, unless you're talking about some other interview. But the work permit for family-based or employment-based adjustment of status takes 3 to 6 months. It usually comes before the interview. But if it hasn't come, you can get it after the interview if the immigration service still hasn't made a decision. Does a candidate who overstayed their visa for months qualify for the work permit you're talking about? And do you have to prove that your skills are sought after, especially by US companies? No. So I think you're mixing up the employment-based processes with the parole process. So if you've overstayed, you cannot necessarily automatically qualify for the work permit. You may, but what I do is I evaluate each, because with an overstay, there may be certain circumstances that have led to the overstay. It may be you're afraid to return to your country. It may be that somebody promised you a work permit. It may be that somebody forced you to stay here. It may be that your spouse, you plan to stay with your citizen or resident spouse, and then they ended up mistreating you. Those do lead to relief. So it's going to depend on your particular circumstances, and this is where you do talk to me in a consultation for me to evaluate whether you have had any of these issues that could open up the door for you to get work permit and your status here, which could include your green card. Now, do you have to have proof that your skills are sought after? No, it's those are not connected. Usually, when you're talking about showing skills are sought after or showing your qualifications in regard to employment, it's that employment based permanent residence or visa. All right, so that's going to be it for me. I don't, let me see if I see any more questions. I don't see any more questions. So I'm heading out. I'm aiming to come back tomorrow at noon to answer some more questions and give you some more information about topics that I think will interest you. So just received the interview letter a few days ago, filed and sent in a marriage paperwork in March. So if you receive the interview letter, you have the interview coming up, you might just be getting your green card instead. So good luck. Make sure you prepare for that interview. The way you need to prepare, though I'm not giving you legal advice, I'm not your attorney, but in general, make sure you review your application, make sure you put together copies of your original documents, make sure that you bring a copy of your entire application that you sent in to them. Make sure, if this is I think marriage based, make sure talk to your spouse, make sure you're both on the same page regarding certain questions. If you go to the link in the profile, you will see some of the most common questions that come up in the green card interview. So it is on Linktree. So go to the link in the profile, go to the link in the description of this video, and I do have a link there showing some of the most common interview questions that come up in the interview. And all the best. So you might be getting that green card before you even get the work permit. If my mom is filing for me and I get married after, if your mom is a citizen, I just noticed that there was a lag. Okay, I noticed there was a lag. But if your mom is a citizen, so I'm answering this question here. If my mom is filing for me and I get married after, what should I do? Now, if your mom is a citizen, you will then fall into another category. It's called the F3 category, where now you're the married child of a citizen. It takes 12 years, unfortunately. So it means you're going to wait a longer time. Mom is a green card holder, you're now out of the running. You don't qualify anymore for the green card through your parent. Your parent is going to have to become a citizen and then apply for you as a married child of a citizen. All right, thanks everyone for your time. I appreciate it, and I will be back tomorrow at lunchtime. So have a great Labor Day, have a good holiday, have a good week if I don't see you later this week. Have a good one. Bye bye.